Alright y'all, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to weave 3-shaft twill, and I'm going to be referencing Beka products. I'll be using the showing you how to set up your Beka 20 or 24-inch loom, and I will be shifting to a smaller, more portable loom a little bit later on in the video. So the procedure for setting up your Beka loom is pretty much the same procedure as it is to set up the Cricut or the Ashford or pretty much any heddle loom. The only thing that may be a little bit different, as you know, you are warping this off the head off the loom base, is that you just want to make sure that you are that the bottom part, which is wider than the top, the part that has the little notches that fit on your little shed block, that's at the bottom, right? And you know, that's kind of sort of important, because if it's not, it's going to be upside down, possibly backwards. So do make a note to put it in the right way. It may be helpful, and this might be helpful for anyone, whether you have a Beka or a Cricut or the Ashford, to go ahead and make a little piece of paper that you can tape onto the top of your loom and let you know which is shaft 1, shaft 2, and the pickup stick, which is shaft 2, which is the pickup stick, and shaft 1 and 3, which are your looms. All right, since I was going to do such a narrow warp, I decided just to use my smallest loom. This is my Beka RH4. It's a little 4-inch loom, and I will actually, when I actually get it all set up, you'll see that I'm actually using the custom-made version that I had made for me by Beka Wood Products. They were kind enough to make me a custom loom, and you'll see that a little bit later on. But the procedure for threading it is very straightforward. It is the same thing that we did with the other threadings. The only difference is that 1 and 3 are the heddles. Those are the shafts 1 and 3. Shaft 2 is a pickup stick. So super simple. In fact, you may want to consider starting out with the 3-shaft weaving and then moving to 4 shafts, since you're working with less heddles. And this is very straightforward. So as you're doing it, you're going to thread shaft 1, which is heddle 1. Then you're going to thread shaft 2, which is going straight through all the slots. And then you're going to thread shaft 3, which is the second heddle. All right. Shaft 1 is heddle 1. That's what I'm doing. I'm going through the slot in the back. Shaft 2 is to the left of it, and it's going to go through all of the slots. It's going to go through the slot beside the hole for heddle 1, and then go through the other slot. And that's going to be, those threads going to be on the pickup stick. And then shaft 3 is going to go through a slot and then the next hole in heddle 2. Shaft 1 is 1, shaft 2 is the pickup stick, and shaft 3 is the hole on shaft 2. Once you get it, you will be golden, right? It's very straightforward. You can get some ideas for some patterns. There are free patterns out there for 3-shaft weaving. The best book is the book that I referenced in the lesson, and also I reference it again in the next lesson under further reading. It has a wealth of patterns for 3-shaft style weaving, and you can pretty much convert a lot of the patterns that are made for 4-shaft weaving to 3-shaft weaving. That Fiberworks program is a good resource for that. If you think that you're going to be using a lot of or would like to try a lot of weaving on 3 shafts, then it might be worth it to invest in that program. I haven't as yet, because you know, I'm not so much for this whole multi-shaft weaving thing, but who knows, in the future I might. But it's really the least that, if you're really interested, intrigued by this idea of multi-shaft weaving on a rigid heddle loom, the best resource out there is the Three Shaft Weaving book. You can get it on Amazon. It was first written in Dutch, I think, and then translated to English. So I'm thinking that it would be available on the international Amazon platforms as well as in international bookstores. So for my Canadians and my Aussies and Kiwis, New Zealanders, and my dear sweet friends in Germany, you all should be able to get that three shaft weaving book. It's not made for rigid heddle weaving, but that's the whole purpose of this module, to expand your options of what you can do by showing you how to do these techniques so that you'll be able to use books and resources that are not specifically made for the rigid heddle loom, but you can adapt them for use on your loom. I'm going to bring to your attention the fact that somehow, as I was threading, I threaded that back heddle a little bit too close together, so there is some spacing issues. Later on in this video, you're going to see that I end up fixing it and rethreading it and making it, come out right. But I left it in here because I want you to know that, what, sometimes you make mistakes, and I want you to see that you can still weave even if you make the same mistake and you are missing some. As long as you threaded them properly, as long as, all they're going through slots and holes, even if you spaced the ones in the back a little bit too close together, it's no big deal. Why I came over to this side to do this final thread on this side is that's the floating salvage. So this is a different loom than a rigid heddle loom. This is actually a loom that's really great for sampling of all sorts, whether it's plain weave sampling or like what I'm doing a real sample of this multi-shaft, two-shaft weaving, three-shaft weaving on two heddles. It's really great because you don't have to put on such a huge warp because it's a small loom. This video isn't an instructional on how to use this particular loom, but it is, if you did get one of these looms a while back, this will show you some ways that you can use it, because I know some of you did get this loom when you saw me use it during the challenge in September. But the procedure is the same, which is the basic thing that I always want you to understand, is that no matter what type of loom you have, the basics, the fundamentals are the same. I brought you see how energized that thread is? This thread is so staticky. Oh my goodness. It is super staticky. Anyway, so the principles are the same, right? This is why I'm using a variety of looms. I didn't do this course just on one loom, because I feel like it's super important for you to see that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your situation doesn't matter. You do not have, your loom is not too whatever to be able to be useful. Your loom is not too old. Your functionality is not too, obsolete to be able to do amazing things. If anything, the most rudimentary loom that we have that's being made now is leap years better than what some of the earlier looms that were heddle looms are. All right, so I'm using these sticks to do the spacing for it. And now I'm going to go ahead and, after I've gotten the thread spaced out, I'm going to go ahead, I'm trying to make sure that the threads are passing the way that they need to. Now I can start weaving. So I'm going to start out like I started out with the others, just doing a plain weave. You're not going to get a perfect tabby when you're not going to get a perfect tabby. I think it looks more closer to the a perfect tabby, or more closer to a normal, what you would see on a 4-shaft loom tabby when it's threaded with twill. But because it's not the way that a 3-shaft loom is made up, it's not going to give you your perfect over under over under. But nevertheless, I'm still going to go a couple of passes over under to be able to um, make make a bit of a heading so that I will be able to hem the bottom. So now I'm starting the actual twill. I'm using a pickup stick to create my shed, and I have this sped up because I want you to see it done, and then I'm going to slow it down a little bit later on in this video. But what I'm doing is I'm passing the threads through, I'm raising the shuttle as I've done before, turning it on its side to make the shed, taking it out, and then when I go down, it's easier not to need to use the pickup stick, and when I'm using the shed 4, I don't really need the pickup stick. But I'm not this is not real time, so I'm weaving a good little bit faster than normal, but I want you to see that it's really in the last video, as I was weaving the 4 shaft, I was taking so much time as I was pausing to do the salvage threads that I think it was making it seem a little bit more complicated than what it actually needs to be. And so I wanted you to see this kind of more smoothly, to see what's being done. You're manipulating each of the heddles, and sometimes you need to work with it a little bit in order to find the threads that are supposed to be up or down. And you'll know if you can't see the shed in one way, you may need to move and put the shed stick behind or in front of the heddle, depending on what you're seeing, just to make sure that you're actually seeing what seeing the threads and able to pick them up as you'd like them. I will say that you always want to use it's easier. I was finding that it's a whole lot easier to weave with the heddle of the greatest density. In this case, it would be, I think that's either a 10 or a 12 in the back at the front, and the heddle with the wider density, the least density, which is this 8 dent at the back. The reason why is that the threads have a tendency to want to stick together because they're doubled for this threading. There are alternate threadings in the book. This is threaded at 100%. You can thread it at 50%. You can thread it at 75%, and that means that the threads are not as close together. And when I redo this or when I update this, I'll probably get into those different threadings and when that can be helpful. But without needing to go into that, just take this little piece of advice. It is useful, and I think it actually could be a little bit ideal to use heddles of different densities with the heddle that you want, the finest density closest to you, and then heddles of greater density behind you, just so that the threads have a little bit more space to move back and forth. So say that you want to weave something that has a 12 dent set, then you would want to use a 12 dent heddle at the front, and then maybe a 10, 2 10s, or an 8 and a 10 if you don't have 2 10s or 2 8s at the back. Just remember that the heddle of the front, you can't make it full width if you're using a heddle that is a lower density, because there's just not going to be that many slots and holes behind. Actually, as I said that and think about it, you probably could. It just all depends on your threading. So if you threaded the front heddle at 100% and you threaded the back heddle at 200%, then yeah, you could totally use the thing in full dent. But that's like maybe heddle weaving the 200 class, or maybe even the 300 class. We're not there right now. This is the 101, so let's not worry about that. Just let's know that it is possible, and at some point when I find it applicable, I will explain it all to you so that those of you who want to go down those rabbit holes will have the tools to do that. Right now we're not going to worry about that. So if you have questions, just leave me a comment below this lesson and I will respond to them and ask. But of course, even better, come to virtual studio hours and we can dialogue about it and get it cleared up. So I decided that I wanted to flip this, and so I did it with the 8 dent in the front, right? And so I decided that I wanted to try it with a 12 dent in the front because I have that option with this little tiny loom, with the sampling of this loom. So I went ahead and I just cut the piece. I hem stitched it and I cut the piece from the bottom. And now I'm going to tie a knot and I'm going to flip the whole thing around. That's why I love this little loom. It is so perfect for sampling. Did you see how simple that was? Did y'all see that? That was really simple, wasn't it? Really, really straightforward. So I didn't have to re-thread anything, and now I've gone from an 8 dent to a 12 dent set just to do a sample to be able to see, because I wanted to see the difference. And that's the neat thing about this particular little sampling loom and using multiple heddles, because you can try that out. I do want to note that I did go and I threaded this back heddle and spaced the threading out a little bit better because it had gotten a little bit off, and so I did that off camera, and so the spacing is a little bit more like right. There were some little idiosyncrasies in the threading, and there was some little cram and space going on, unintentional, but I've embraced it and said, such is how it's going to be. I'm not going to worry about it. And I would encourage you, just starting out, just roll with it, enjoy it, and it's learning. It's enjoyable. You're creating something that most people aren't able to do, and for that, give yourself grace. Don't make yourself feel bad. So, okay, so I need to go get my stick, and now I'm going to put that in there so I can weave my little bit of my tabby, my header at the front. And once I know that some people they complain about their shed on this loom or that loom isn't as wide as they'd like it to be, and some people spend a lot of time and extra money to get looms that have the perfect shed and the up and the down block. But I find that knowing how to just getting comfortable using a pickup stick to weave is a useful skill to develop with rigid heddle weaving, because we don't have as wide of a shed as a floor loom weaver. You're not going to have a massive shed like you're going to get when you have the way that those looms are made, but that's not a big deal. Just use a shed stick. That's what they're called. They're a shed stick. That's that's what they're made for. And so yeah, so now I'm negotiating my salvage. My floating salvage is useful in all types of twills because it makes sure you're catching those edges, and that's what I'm just making sure that I'm catching the edges that I want to as I go. Now, as you can see, I'm weaving with my with the 12 dent set. I'm pretty sure this is a 12 dent set. I think that the other is was an 8 dent. That it's a lot closer together. I think I like the way that this looks better than the wider spacing. And so, I really enjoyed the fact that it was like no extra threading to be able to try out this different spacing. I just flipped the thing around. So, that was useful in swatching if you were wanting to try this out on you could try with one thing. You may not be able to flip your heddles around like this, but you could totally take cut your work, um, carefully, knot the back as you take it off the loom, and then flip your work around, retie to the back. It's totally doable. I've done it before when I've accidentally threaded my thing backwards, and because I was like either doing it for a class or something, where I was doing a video and I didn't want to have it seen that I had threaded the loom backwards, which is no big deal. I mean, you can totally have the back bumpy part facing you and it's not that big a deal. But whatever, I've done it before, that you just flip it around, flip the whole heddle and everything around, no rethreading required. But yeah, that's another cool thing about using heddles of different sets. It makes it so that you can try out two different sets and see which one you like best. Wouldn't suggest that if you have a multi-yard warp on there. No. That is the beauty of a smaller loom, that you can put a very short warp on there and not, you know, not feel put out to rewarp the thing again. I've never been much for doing swatching, but because I just kind of usually roll with whatever it is I happen to be making. But for something like this, where you're working in a pattern and you want to be able to see what, you know, what you're getting before you get too deep into it, um, swatching would be something that I would find to be probably wise and useful. So, as you're seeing that, it's you go and you're just really it's always just back and forth. It's just, what are you doing with the heddles? And you see, sometimes I'll go in front, sometimes I may go behind. It just depends on where I'm able to see those threads being raised. The whole thing is that you don't want to skip threads. I mean, you can, but by and large, the point of weaving, with a multi-shaft pattern is the pattern itself that's coming out. So if you're skipping threads and you have a weird long run, yeah, you can say that you did it on purpose. And I'm with you with it. I will stand and defend your right to say that you made that huge skip on purpose. I'm totally there with you. But for patterning, I find that when you get to the point and you're like feeling a little bit overwhelmed and that you've lost your place, you can't remember where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be doing, just weave some tappy for a little while, do some fun stuff, and then come back and start again. Start anew. It's a new chapter. You've turned a new page. It's a new opportunity to find your rhythm again, and just take that opportunity to do that. And so, yeah, that's where I look at it. Um, I will be honest, when I make like a major mistake and like skip a thread or something like that, I will weave backwards if it's not too far and fix it, because it even though my aesthetic is kind of free rolling and freewheeling, um, I I do have a limit to um, the level of accidental mistakes that I'm okay with just going. And everyone does, my limit is probably higher than some, but it's whatever you feel comfortable with. Maybe you want it to be completely perfect, and like I said earlier, I think I said earlier in here, I that you know if you feel like it's not going to be worth weaving because of the fact that you've made some type of um, terrible error, then by all means, rewarp, redo, do what you need to do so that you'll be happy working on your warp, because ultimately it shouldn't be a chore. Weaving is a wonderful hobby, and unless you're doing this to make your living, then it should be enjoyable. And if you ever weave something that you just hate, that you're just like, oh my goodness, this is horrible, um if it's a functional thing, if it's a scarf or a hat or something like that, and it's just so whatever that you just don't want to give it to anybody and you don't want to use it yourself, donate it, donate it to some place. I mean, I cannot imagine that it's that horribly awful that someone less fortunate would not appreciate it for the gift. I personally do try to give my best things. I give nice things, and I do my best when I am weaving for charity. Um, but sometimes if I have something that I may not, it's nothing wrong with it, it's nothing functionally wrong with it, but maybe it's not a color that I would want to use, or it didn't turn out the way I'd want to give to someone, I will totally put that into charity and not feel bad, because one person's horribly awful eye burning eyesore is another person's, wow, someone took the time to make me something and they thought about me as a human being, and I really appreciate the care. So I don't I get it, sometimes we make things that may not be our best. um you can always give them away, but if you want to avoid that, then I'm totally down with you. If you want to redo the whole thing, sampling may help you to avoid those situations. Yes, that was my point in this long, rambling ramble. So I'm pretty much just I'm here just talking to talk you through, or talk with you as you go through. Feel free, if you haven't already, to turn me off, and you can totally turn me off if you want to watch this a second time. But I'm these videos are about you seeing the mechanics, seeing that it is possible, seeing what it takes to be able to create, because I find that even just being able to see it done, seeing that it is possible to do, you can go back to the instructions and better understand what the written word is saying, because you have the visual of the written word being done in action. And so hopefully the combination of this, what I'm doing in in what you've seen in the lessons, going to the book, and now seeing me do it in real time. Well, not really real time, well, double time, but you're going to be able to get a better idea about how you can do it yourself. And yeah, you can do it. I mean, this is one of the simpler, if not the simplest, of the rigid heddle looms. It is totally um, based on the mechanics of rigid heddle loom, but I'm pretty sure that if you're watching me, you have a rigid heddle loom that is a good little bit more complicated, or with a little bit higher functionality than this loom. This loom gets it done. I can make whatever I want on this loom. Nevertheless, I'm just saying that to say that, you know, you can do this. It's not complicated. You do not have to have, an extra shed block. You don't need to have multiple heddle holders. You don't need to have anything super special. You can use whatever it is that you have to be able to do anything that I've covered in this program, from double weave um, to doing these multi shaft things, to finding ways to do pickup with whatever stick you have in your house. If you got a ruler, your kid's ruler, or paint sticks or whatever, you don't have to have fancy things in order to do amazing work. If there is nothing else that I want you to understand, is that you can do amazing things, that you can be an amazingly creative weaver, and there's no excuses, because if anyone else has done it, you can too. All right, y'all. So I'm going to finish up this, and then it's time to go to the next video where we wrap things up. And yeah, it has been amazing, 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 amazing going through this course with you. And I'm already looking forward to the updates that I'll be sharing with you in 2021. And yeah, the best as it comes to creative rigid heddle weaving is definitely yet to come. And so that's it for this video. If you have a question, leave it below this lesson. And if you have something that you want to talk to me about or share with me with, then bring it to virtual office hours and we can workshop together there. All right, y'all. I will see you in the wrap-up lesson. Bye.